Myles Garrett has been traded to the Los Angeles Rams.
Wow.
Oh
my gosh.
With Matthew Stafford seeing this, he might want to keep playing until his wheels fall off. This also means they've got to be out of the running for A.J. Brown. How long has this been in the works, this trade?
They've been talking since right after the draft, the Browns and Rams. The Browns had, said throughout the offseason that they did not intend to trade Myles Garrett, but it never sounded as firm as it was a year ago when they were flatly refusing to even engage here. So there really was not another team that emerged through the process. I would say about 72 hours ago, it seemed like this deal was going to get done. The Browns were not going to do it unless they got Jared Verse as part of the deal. He's a two-time Pro Bowler who's under team control for several more years at a relatively cheap rate, which allows them to get younger at a core position, get a Pro Bowl caliber player who's not making as much money as Myles Garrett. And then in addition to that, they get a 2027 first rounder, a 2028 second rounder, and a 2029 third rounder. So extra day two compensation in 28 and 29, an extra first in 2027, which you can certainly do all the math on that, Rich. A highly regarded draft, particularly for quarterbacks. And now the Browns, who are rolling into 2026 with Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson, potentially are going to have the ammunition to go and get one in 2027.
All right. And so, wow, so much to hit on this front. And the Rams made this deal. I know it's a silly question, but why did they make this deal? Tom, I'll give you the floor and what I think is an obvious answer, but go for it.
They're going for it. I mean, that's it. You don't re-sign Matthew Stafford at this stage in his career. You don't, continue to approach this trading for veteran players. They use a first-round pick on Trent McDuffie, who's a veteran. They sign guys in free agency. They feel like they've got a window to capitalize on Matthew Stafford at the tail end of his career, but still very close to his prime. If you watched him last season, Myles Garrett is one of the most rare difference makers in the entire NFL. You're talking about a really rocky NFC West division where you're contending with the Super Bowl champs in Seattle, obviously the 49ers as well. You need all the horses that you can get, and Myles Garrett's going to change the numbers for them defensively. Parting with Jared Verse is not an easy thing to do, frankly, if you think about how good of a young player he is, but there's only so many Myles Garretts walking the face of the earth. I know the Rams have been looking for pass rush help, really going back to before free agency. They end up finding it in a guy who Myles Garrett, who 15 months ago was signed to a record contract extension, and just a couple of months ago had his option bonus deferred from March to September, which seemed like a tell, even though it wasn't, necessarily, they didn't necessarily need to do that, but it does make things a little bit easier here now because it's going to be the Rams, not the Browns, paying that bonus.
So what are the cap ramifications here for both teams, best you can tell?
This will become official after 4 p.m. Eastern time today, which means that it mitigates the cap hit for the Browns. They'll push some out into 2027. For the Rams, it's just taking on Myles Garrett's base salary for right now. He's due about, I think, $31 million this season in terms of the option bonus and the salary. They can do a conversion on that, and potentially knock that number down, but it's not huge. All the bonus money that was paid out on that new deal, that's all still sitting there on the Browns salary cap. The Rams get him just for the cash that they own.
That's insane.
I mean, wow.
So he's going to make. You're saying Myles Garrett is going to make $30-something million for the Rams, and the Rams get him.
What I mean? That's correct. It's just down the fairway here, but yes,
no,
I mean,
yeah,
that's it. I mean, listen, giving up a first-round pick and a second and a third, and one of your best young, cost-controlled players. I mean, that's not cheap. It's hard to compare it apples and oranges like the Micah Parsons trade where it was 2 1s. But let's say you regard Jared Verse as a guy who, if you were trading for him straight up, you would have to give up a first-round pick and more, if not 2 1s. I mean, Brian Burns went for a couple of 2s years ago. We've seen other pass rushers go for a 1 and more. Max Crosby was going to be 2 first-round picks. Like, Jared Verse is not far off from commanding that. And so you're looking at this as the Browns as we just got this guy plus a first and a second and a third. It's really part of the organizational reset, Rich. If you look at the draft class they had last year, some of the decisions they made on their salary cap, no, they did not want to trade Myles Garrett. They were not going to trade him in this offseason unless they got something really, really substantial. It was a one-bidder type of situation. Again, For whatever rumors might have been out there about other teams, this was really the Rams or nobody. They had to include Jared Verse in the deal. Once Verse was a part of this trade, it was able to get done.
Myles Garrett trade to the Rams, and we'll break down A.J. Brown getting his wish, finally going to New England. Let's start, though, with the breaking news. Garrett on his way to Hollywood. The two-time Defensive Player of the Year with Super Bowl expectations joining a squad that is stacked. The Browns get edge rusher Jared Verse, a 2027 first-round draft pick, and a future second and third. Garrett, by the way, set the single-season sack record with 23 this past season. For much more on this blockbuster, let's bring in Adam Schefter and Louis Riddick. Shefty, what other details do you have on this trade?
Kevin, what's interesting here is if we go back to the end of March when Myles Garrett restructured his contract and pushed back the option bonus payment date from the 15th day of the league year in mid-March to a week before the regular season, there were teams out there that maintained this was the sign that Myles Garrett was going to be traded. And it was shortly after that restructure that the Rams made their first contact with the Browns, continuing to pursue the Defensive Player of the Year. They talked with the Browns for weeks, and the Browns were unwilling to deal Garrett until they came up with the breakthrough. And the breakthrough included two-time Pro Bowl edge rusher Jared Verse. Once the Rams agreed to include him in the deal, which they did not want to do all along, that clinched it for Cleveland. Verse, a 1, a 2, a 3, and that was enough to convince the Browns to part ways with the best defensive player in football and maybe the best player in football.
Yeah, think about that, Louis. The Rams were already Super Bowl favorites before acquiring Garrett. What does this move do now for this team?
Well, you could say, realistically, that maybe he puts them over the top because he gives them the thing that every defensive team and every football team in general covets, which is a defensive closer. Just like a team covets outside a quarterback, a guy who can close a football game offensively with a big play, a plus 20-yard explosive, this is the guy who prevents them because he hunts quarterbacks and he puts them on the back at a Hall of Fame level. Like he's going to walk right into the Hall of Fame when his career is over. And so I think for them, they addressed the back end early on in free agency. They trade for Trent McDuffie, they signed Jalen Watson, and now they have a guy who up front can give them the same kind of impact, not just from his own individual performance, but what he's going to do to free up the rest of the defensive line, like a young pass rusher like Byron Young, the same way Aaron Donald impacted this team the last time they won the Super Bowl on their home football field. That's the kind of impact that Myles Garrett has. When we talk about transcendent, Kevin, and we throw that term around a lot in sports, we oftentimes apply it to people who it really doesn't apply to. This guy is that. He truly is. And I think for him, he has to be right now just thanking his lucky stars because when we talked to him recently, he said, look, really the only thing that was left for Myles is to chase team greatness and chase a championship. Now he's got that at a football team that's absolutely stocked next year. 1 through 30, their top 30 players are as good, if not better, than any teams in the NFL. The Rams, look, Sean McVay, Les Snead, they have to be giggling right now at the way in which this offseason has come together for them.
Yeah, win now mode, especially with you bringing up the Super Bowl in L.A., February 14th, right here on ESPN and ABC. Another major trade today. I talked about it. One many were expecting from Shefty's reporting. The Eagles are sending wide receiver A.J. Brown to the Patriots. Adam Schefter and Mike Reese reporting that Philly gets a 2028 first-round pick and a 2027 fifth-rounder. Drake Maye gets a top target for a team that went to the Super Bowl just a few months ago. Adam, what more can you tell us about this trade?
Well, this was a trade that was in the works for weeks now, Kevin, and the Eagles had to and wanted to wait until post-June 1st to split up the salary cap ramifications of trading A.J. Brown. They were able to split up $40 million, not have to take all that money as a hit in 1 year. That's why they waited until now. And when they got into the office today, they called the Patriots. The two sides were able to finalize a trade that had been in the works for weeks now. And the funny part about this whole thing is that the only other team that expressed a lot of interest in A.J. Brown was the Los Angeles Rams, who at one point in time decided to allocate their resources elsewhere, and they walked away from a trade. So they didn't get a trade done for A.J. Brown, but they did get a trade done for Trent McDuffie, and today for Myles Garrett. So once again, all these trades were interrelated in some small way, but the Patriots get a player that played for Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. He never wanted to trade him to Philadelphia in the first place, and now he's gone out and reacquired him to be the #1 wide receiver in the Patriots offense that also landed Romeo Doubs during the offseason.
And let's now go to the Eagles offense now without A.J. Brown. Lewis, what do you expect to see from this offense as they also have a new offensive coordinator?
Yeah, a lot of moving parts, right, for your hometown team, man. A lot of moving parts. But, they have got some weapons now. They don't have any that look like A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's one of one. There's maybe only one guy walking, the face of the earth, or rather in the NFL, that looks like him, and that's his former teammate at Ole Miss, DK Metcalf. So, look, I think for them, Devontae has all the skills in order to be a #1. He can play all three positions. He can play the flanker, the split end, and the slot. And he is smooth as silk and catches that football and tracks the football as good as any receiver in the NFL. I look to see how he ascends this year now into this #1 role, because I think he's going to take it and he's going to absolutely run with it. Then you know what? The drafting of Mekhi Lemon from USC is a huge get for them because of the toughness he brings, the contested catch ability that he showed time and time again at USC. And make no mistake, he is not just a slot receiver. He is a guy who can work outside as well, and he really does fight for that football down the field. Eli Stowers, who you're seeing here, the do-it-all tight end, the Mackey Award winner from Vanderbilt, he's going to be the guy who's going to have to control the middle of the field with that catch radius, that 40-plus inch vertical, and the ability to break tackles and make those tough yards after the catch. So, look, that's a lot right there for Sean Mannion, the new OC, to put together, but they are not devoid of talent by any means. This truly could be one of those situations where both parties are better off. AJ's better off with Mike Vrabel up in New England because Mike knows him so well and can push the right buttons. And for Philadelphia, it allows Devontae Smith to really show you why he won the Heisman.
Big year for this Eagles offense, especially for Jalen Hurts. We're exactly 100 days away from the start of the NFL season featuring the Seahawks against the Patriots, a rematch, of course, of the Super Bowl that we saw just a few months ago. Shefty, Lewis, thank you so much. For much more on the trade
Thank you, Kevin.
no one expected, here's Tony and Mike with PTI's bonus topic.
All right, Wilbon, what is your reaction to Myles Garrett's trade to the Rams?
Tony, people were walking up to this suggestion, before the draft, and they were saying that, he should be somewhere else. And Myles Garrett never got to the point, it seemed to me, of like demanding a trade.
I didn't think he did.
Right, and you pointed out earlier on our show that he
seemed
like he was fine there. But when he goes there, it's a wow.
Yeah.
I mean, the Rams seem like they've got everything in the world, and they wanted this guy. And he is the sort of sequel, I shouldn't say sequel, Garrett's to maybe the greatest defensive player in the last 25 years, but to Aaron Donald. And when Aaron Donald was at his best, what happened in Los Angeles? They won a Super Bowl.
Well,
they did.
Yes, but one of the reasons they won that Super Bowl is they pulled the trigger on a trade, trading the former overall #1 pick, Jared Goff, for Matthew Stafford, and they brought in Stafford.
They did, but they still needed on the defensive side a Hall of Fame.
I'm saying, well,
and Aaron Donald
it's played
was
on
there
both sides
already.
of the ball, and they needed that.
And now Myles Garrett goes to a place where he's now looking at finishing 4th in his division. He really isn't.
All right, so I'm glad you mentioned the word division. That division that they are in is a monster. Seattle just won the Super Bowl. San Francisco is a terrific team. And the Rams have to get ahead of one and stay ahead of the other. So when they make a deal, it is a blockbuster deal. I mean, now you look at the Rams and you say to yourself, okay, maybe that's the magic ingredient that gets them above Seattle.
And all the people who were whining about what the Rams and Les Snead did not do on draft night, get somebody to help now, help Stafford now.
By the way,
he didn't help?
You might have noticed, because there have been, 63,000 commercials advertising next year's Super Bowl. You know where it is? It's in the city of Los Angeles. And so when the Los Angeles Rams make a deal like this, that adds more intrigue, it seems to me, to the entire season. I mean, Garrett, in the first 9 years of his career, has more sacks, 125 and a half, than anyone in history other than Reggie White, who most people think is the greatest.
That's like being on a list in baseball with Ruth,
it's a big
or in
deal.
basketball with Wilt.
It's a big
When
deal.
you're on this with Reggie White. By the way, don't award that division. Don't crown him just yet, that division, because they got the Arizona Cardinals in that division. We, in the NFC Central, we don't have a weak link like that. I'm just saying.
Stop it.
Just saying.
Just stop it.
Just saying.
Tell him to stop that.
Back to you.
Les Snead and Sean McVay continue their philosophy of F them picks. Since 2016, the Rams have made just 3 first-round selections, and 2 of those players were eventually traded, including their 2024 top pick, Jared Verse, who was dealt with their 2027 first-rounder today to bring in Myles Garrett. NFL analyst Peter Schrager joining us now. So the Rams just traded away one of their 3 first-round picks from the last decade, but they got back the best defensive player on the planet in Myles Garrett. What's the significance of Garrett to this already loaded Rams roster?
The player itself is obviously an incredible addition. What I think is interesting and what insight I've gotten over the last few hours is how many weeks and months this has been in the works. Now, they selected Ty Simpson with the first round pick, and that caused a great brouhaha. Well, in doing so, they told Matthew Stafford that, hey, we're taking Simpson. We're letting you know so you don't find out online or I'm on Twitter or you find out when we say the name. They told him that day, but they also told him, we are relentlessly going to attack this offseason to get you more weapons, and in weapons that might be offense or defense. Myles Garrett is the best defensive player on the planet. So in drafting Ty Simpson, they did not put up the white flag and say we're already moving for the future. And if anything, it was a package deal. It was, we're drafting Ty Simpson, but in doing that, we are also going to get Myles Garrett. Remember, Kevin, defense is what let them down in the NFC Championship game. They scored all the points and Stafford did everything he could, but they could not stop Seattle. The hope is the addition of Myles Garrett gets them one step closer to tasting a Super Bowl victory yet again.
And keep in mind, too, where the Rams are picking, they won't have a top 20 pick down the road. Keep that in mind as they pursue this Super Bowl championship with Matthew Stafford. Let's talk about the other team in this trade. The Browns get Verse and multiple picks. How do you see this playing out in Cleveland long term?
Yeah, look, there's been breadcrumbs throughout this offseason, and I've been on some of these shows saying, hey, guys, like, is this nothing or something? The fact that Myles Garrett's never been in person with his head coach and it's already June, or Myles Garrett hasn't had a conversation in person with his new defensive coordinator and it's late May. That stuff is real. This deal has been in the works, and Myles Garrett is now going to a place where he's going to be able to pursue a championship. And in return, the Browns get a 26-year-old soul-crushing intensity locker room leader in Jared Verse. And Kevin, as someone who grew up in the Philadelphia area, you know that walking around Lincoln Financial before that snow game 2 years ago in the playoffs, there was Jared Verse talking smack to all the fans, saying how much he loves this moment. Jared Verse is a gamer. They get a 26-year-old pass rusher and 3 additional picks. If the Browns were ever going to trade Myles Garrett, and I want to make it clear, he was not demanding a trade this offseason. It was for a haul like the one they got. It's going to take the local fans and maybe the local media a little time to get around this trade. You don't trade away a player like Myles Garrett for nothing. But they got what they think is 100 cents on the dollar.
And they got those picks, like you said, where potentially it arms them for a very rich 2027 draft class. Meanwhile, the Patriots, we've been waiting. Finally, the deal's done. They get a bona fide number 1 in wide receiver A.J. Brown. What does this now mean for Drake Maye and the offense?
They have an alpha, and they have a real guy who has won a Super Bowl championship and been a huge piece to that team, and a guy who wants to be there with Mike Vrabel. Now, bringing in Romeo Doubs was a nice addition in March, but there have been few trades in NFL history that have been less of a secret as this one. And it was that the Eagles were just trying to figure out if they can not figure this out and not give up next year's first round pick, but the following first round pick in 2028. And that's what it ended up being. They get that from the Patriots, obviously, for A.J. Brown. The truth of the matter is, you have a deep threat, you got a guy who can run over the middle, and you now have a leader for that young wide receiver room, which I think might have let them down the stretch in the playoffs.
Yeah, and a guy that is an alpha, and he could dominate games when he's locked in. Brown bringing that playoff experience, fantastic in 2 Super Bowls, including 1 a ring with the Eagles. Peter, thank you so much.
Adam Schefter on A.J. Brown. Adam, what's the latest?
All right, Laura, the trade is in. It is official. A.J. Brown is being traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. It's going to be for a 2028 first-round pick. It's also going to be for a 2027 fifth-round pick. The Patriots have 2 fifth-round picks. It'll be for the better of those 2 particular picks at this point in time, but that trade is the second trade. Who would have thought that the A.J. Brown trade would be the minor of the 2 trades that came down today? But that is the situation. It is now official. A.J. Brown is reuniting with Mike Vrabel in New England. The 2 have worked together before. They are going to work together again now. That trade is just coming down as we speak. A.J. Brown to the New England Patriots.
Adam's trying to get that tweet out. I'm going to buy him just a second here. But, Adam, I do want to follow up. As you've said many times, we expected this to happen. What was the process like to get to this point in leading up to it actually happening here on June 1st, as you see all the information on the screen?
Well, my understanding is the 2 sides had not had any contact in recent weeks. There were conversations that occurred in March and April, and an understanding that they would pick this up again after June 1st. And that's exactly what they wound up doing today, exchanging phone calls and coming to the agreement that will send a 2028 1 to the Philadelphia Eagles for A.J. Brown, a 2027 fifth-round pick back to the Eagles as well. So the Eagles get 2 first-round picks. Now, here's the other interesting twist to all this, of course. At one point in time, the Los Angeles Rams were sniffing around an A.J. Brown trade, and they decided ultimately that they would be better off spreading their resources elsewhere, trading for Trent McDuffie, and now trading for Myles Garrett.
All right, Reese, covering the Pats, joins us now. Mike, what more can you tell us about Brown and New England?
All right, Laura, so I want to tell you what I've learned about this trade, what I've heard from players about this trade, and what I've seen with my own eyes in terms of the team's receiving core. So what I've learned about this trade, the background, Mike Vrabel, having coached A.J. Brown for 3 years in Tennessee, a big part of this in leading to the conviction to give up the first-round pick in 2028. That's a significant chip. What I've heard from players, Laura, we've talked about this for months, the possibility. They are excited. Just last night, starting running back Ramondre Stevenson telling reporters, I think this would do a lot for us. So they've been anticipating this trade. And then I want to tell you what I saw at practice. The last time we laid eyes on this team on the field last week, I watched those wide receivers. And last year, when you watched them, you saw Stephon Diggs leading them through the wide receiver drills. It was that alpha presence. I didn't see that type of presence with the group last week. Tomorrow, we're going to be here. Can you imagine the scene, Laura? All the reporters, A.J. Brown probably going to be here. I don't know if they'll practice, but that alpha is going to be back in that wide receiver room based on what I saw last week.
How should they feel about that offense now heading into the season without Brown?
Well, regardless of if A.J. was there, Boogie, this offense was going to have to, come along, and they were going to have to do things differently. And Jalen Hurts was going to have to step outside of his comfort zone and do some things at quarterback play-wise that he's just not – he doesn't do a lot. And that's throw with anticipation, middle of the field, try to attack people in areas that were available to them. The Philadelphia Eagles will be fine. I don't want to get on television today because A.J. Brown is gone and act like Howie Roseman is not still the general manager in Philadelphia. I've applauded and talked about how well Howie has done his job, and I think this team will be fine. What it does, and I know we'll talk about it ad nauseum as we get closer and closer to the season, it puts an onus on Jalen Hurts. It puts an onus on him not only to play at a high level, but for this team to win as well and figure out who that new go-to weapon will be. Now, I assume it will be Devontae Smith. I think he has all of the requisite tools to be that guy at wide receiver. You see what they did in the draft with Mekhi Lemon out of USC. I like Stowers a lot out of Vanderbilt, the tight end. He may turn out to be a weapon for them, and we see what they've done. But don't get it twisted. A.J. Brown being a New England Patriot is going to put an onus on Jalen Hurts like he's never had before, and I think Jalen is going to respond based on what I know about him.
Yeah, our understanding, and this is something I'm reporting with Adam Schefter and Tom Pelissero, is that the Los Angeles Rams were the team. They were the team. They were persistent. They reached out to the Cleveland Browns wanting to trade for Myles Garrett around the time when the Browns adjusted Myles Garrett's contract to move some bonuses up a little bit. The Browns said, no, he is not available. The Rams tried again after the draft and said, we want him. Here's more. Here's more. They said, no, he is not available. okay, well, then they said, what if we included Jared Verse? Well, that was someone the Cleveland Browns have had eyes on for a long time. When Jared Verse was suddenly in the deal, the picks got moved around a little bit. It got to a point where the two teams said, you know what? This could actually happen. They're expected to agree in totality later today. Right now, they are finalizing this deal, this absolute stunner. Myles Garrett expected to be a member of the Los Angeles Rams, the one and only team to pursue him. Persistence pays off for less need for Sean McVay and company. Just an unbelievable day. Unbelievable.
Ian, what a nightmare for opposing off. Already one of the better pass rushes in football, and obviously you lose Verse, who's an ascendant young player. I'm excited to talk about what that means for Cleveland. But Myles Garrett joins a defensive line that is extremely strong on the interior. Kobe Turner, I feel like, is one of the best defensive tackles in football. People don't talk about. Fifth, by the way, in pass rush win. Braden Fisk, Byron Young opposite him. This is a team that does not blitz very much, and with Myles Garrett, they can continue that. They do not have to. This is already one of, if not the best rosters in the entire NFL. And now with this trade, as well as the additions they made in the secondary, which was arguably the one weakness of the team last year, trading for Trent McDuffie and adding Jalen Watson, this is the best team in the NFL. I don't think that should be controversial at all. They are the prohibitive Super Bowl favorites, and they had a player in Myles Garrett who is not just the best defensive player in the league, might be the best player in the entire league.
Now we are welcoming in Maurice Jones-Drew, who is with the Rams all the time. MJD, what are your thoughts on this trade, and what do you think they're saying internally?
Well, first of all, Taylor, I think the Rams don't care about anyone's personal business. As I'm working out right now, trying to get a good sweat in, keep up with my guy Ian and Mike Garafolo, Rams are like, forget your workout, Maurice. We want to make a massive trade, and we want to go ahead and solidify this defense that the Rams thought they had a championship team last year. And obviously, you go into Seattle, doesn't pan out. They addressed the secondary, but they felt that they needed a little bit more. And when you can get a guy like Myles Garrett, you don't hesitate at all. You go out and you do what you have to do. Jared Verse was an awesome player for the Rams for the last couple of years. He was a leader in that Rams locker room, especially on that defense, the way he played. And it sucks to see him go, to be honest with you. But when you get an MVP type player, a defensive MVP, a guy that can wreck a game, it seems like the Rams are going all in. Like Ian just said, F them picks, man. We're here to try to find a way to win a championship. And as you saw last year, defense does that.
MJD, how long, first of all, thank you for joining us from your workout. That was very selfless and gracious of you. But
Great job,
how long do you think that the Rams have really been thinking that this is a possibility of happening and talking about Myles joining this team?
Well, there's been multiple names thrown out with the Rams. A.J. Brown was one of them early in the offseason. So the Rams are always looking to get better, right? They're always looking to see how they can get better in this league. If you stay the same, you're actually losing. And so I know there's a lot of people that were upset about the draft and, they took a quarterback and they needed this and they needed that. Well, the Rams felt like they wanted to brace themselves for the future, obviously with Matthew Stafford as he's getting older, but also had the opportunity to go out and get a big-time playmaker. When I got the text this morning, I thought it was going to be A.J. Brown. I'm not going to lie to you. I immediately texted my group chat and was like, hey, listen, Rams, big news, possible A.J. Brown. But this is bigger than that. This is colossal. I don't know any other word to use besides that, to find a way to get Myles Garrett, a guy that literally can play all across the line of scrimmage, can wreck the game, can win games, won games for the Cleveland Browns. And so if you have an explosive offense like the Rams have had, to add that piece to this defensive line is going to be amazing. And then also he's a teacher and he's selfless. And that's what's the most important thing that I think that's going to go on.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Seriously?
Yeah, we're out here working. We're out here working. Just like the Rams, to get better, Ian. That's what we're doing today.
Is there anyone else that you're working out with who'd like to weigh in on this trade? Because what you should do is just bring your phone over to them and ask what they think. Like, any other really good defensive players, or who are you working out with?
Well, I'm working out solo, but I think I had to go outside the gym because there's a lot of people in there. It's rude, it's gym etiquette. But listen, I don't know what the Rams. I've been in the building. I've talked to a lot of people. They've always, like I said, they're always looking to get better. That's the most important thing. I think again, to go out and find a way to get Myles Garrett, which I didn't think was available because of his no trade clause. I know Judy spoke eloquently about that earlier, to see what other teams. Judy, it doesn't matter what other teams. because we have a possible opportunity for him to be with the Rams, which would be awesome. But again, to go out and get a player like that magnitude at this time in the season is going to be huge. And I mean, it just turns the NFC West into an arms race again. I mean, Mike Evans is with the Niners. We saw what the Seahawks have done. It's just going to be a very tough division. And I'm super excited to call games for him and be able to say Myles Garrett not sacking Matthew Stafford or not sacking whoever the quarterback is, but saying that he's there on this Rams defense and getting after some guys.
Yeah, MJD, you know what's really interesting is obviously Myles Garrett got the NFL sack record last year, was an unbelievable force, maybe the best season ever, probably the best season ever by a pass rusher. But, like, it's not like the Browns had a lead that much. Imagine what Myles Garrett is going to be like with the Los Angeles Rams, who are really good, who have the returning MVP Matthew Stafford, who are probably going to have some leads, and Myles Garrett probably going to be facing quarterbacks that need to throw. I don't know what his actual total is going to be because you know teams are going to be game planning for him like crazy. But, oh, my God, this guy's going to have a lot of opportunities to sack the quarterback, don't you think?
No, Ian, I think not only does he have a lot of opportunities to sack the quarterback, there's a lot of opportunities for everyone else on that defensive line. You talk about Byron Young, Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk, opportunities to go there. Josiah Stewart, who came on big last year in a reserve role to get after the quarterback. And then you have his ability to teach those guys, all right, on the front line on what he sees and how he does things. You go from Aaron Donald to Myles Garrett, right? And that's something that's special that needs to be talked about as well. But then the thing about the guys on the back end, if I know that you have literally 3 seconds to get the ball off and I can find a way, like if you don't get it off, you're going to get sacked. Now I can sit on some routes. I can do some different things. I'm excited to kind of see what this defense is going to look like. Last year you had to do some exotic blitzes to try to get some pressure on the quarterback. Expect this year to see a lot of simple coverages, some man-to-man, maybe a little bit of zone. But, you know, with Myles Garrett, Myles Garrett can play all across the line. He can play over the center, over the guard, on the outside. It just really makes it more versatile defense. And so, again, this is something, again, like I said, Ian, tell me if I'm wrong. Is this something that's open right now? Or did it happen? Or this is going to happen?
This is expected to happen. Nothing can happen until after 4 o'clock today. The two teams are kind of working through some of the final compensation, but all indications are this is expected to happen, and Myles Garrett will be a member of the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, last thing for me, go Rams.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I have one question for you, MJD, because you obviously know the mindset of great players and great competitors. Nobody ever questioned Myles Garrett's motor before, but when he's put into this position now, playing for a contending team, really for the first time in his career, does he come with even more juice now?
Well, I think, Judy, I think it's going to open up a ton, right? He's going to be in a new area. He has to reinvent himself. I know it sounds crazy, but anytime you go from one team to another, you want to go out and be the best version of yourself, right? It's kind of like a breath of fresh air in a way. And so he's going to come out and play well and kind of get thrown into what the Rams want him to do. I'm sure they're not going to hesitate to give him everything in the playbook and see what he can and can't do, which probably isn't much. But yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be a competitive spirit. These practices are going to be competitive. It makes training camp and mini camp and some of these, practices are going to be super, super high level competitive. So that's what you're looking for, right? You want to iron sharpens iron. You hear that a lot from coaches, but I think with Myles Garrett being there, that's going to help this offensive line out. That's going to help this run game out, the passing game, the protections. And maybe Sean's going to have to do what he did with Aaron Donald, which I don't know if many know. There's sometimes the offense didn't look so good with Aaron Donald, so you had to sit Aaron Donald out. Like, hey, man, you're on timeout for a little bit so we can get the ball off. Maybe that happens.